How's it going, everybody? Welcome to today's episode of the Like Attracts Like podcast. Today, we're going to talk about and reference an older episode from December that was based on the law of hypnotic rhythm. I've gone over all of the messages from the listener portal on the website, and the majority of people were really interested in diving a little bit deeper into a certain component of what the law of hypnotic rhythm is, how it creates subconscious patterns in our life that we live to, and a little bit more in depth on how we can shift those patterns and call them out. So I'm super pumped to be able to dive back into this one with each and every one of you guys and hopefully make a little bit more sense out of something that really can have profound benefits in your life once uncovered. So stick around. We're going to dive in deep once again to the law of hypnotic rhythm when we come back.
Take a look at life from a different perspective. What if life is happening for you and not to you? This is the Like Attracts Like podcast with your host, Pat Mahan.
So welcome back. I know that I mentioned in the introduction, if you guys can remember, that I covered an episode on the law of hypnotic rhythm back in December, and what it does is it deals with a certain linear aspect of how our thoughts, or what we let into our consciousness as far as the thoughts that we think, how those things become repetitive cycles in our life because they are stored in our subconscious, or our hard drive, if you will. And as this unfolds deeper and deeper and deeper through repetition, it's not only what our awareness looks for under the scope of our general consciousness or our general awareness or everyday waking life, but it runs on a loop without us knowing it. And even with us not focusing consciously on these narratives or patterns that have been developing and being stored in the memory banks of our memory banks, because we have said we wanted to acknowledge it so many times, it's now doing it without us even knowing. So most of the questions from the listener portal were essentially asking me which one of these parts of the process I thought were the most powerful, or which one I thought was most important for people to focus on. So before I get into that, obviously I'm just going to quickly touch on the different boxes, if you will, that store the different segments that we could look to analyze for ourselves why we do the things we do and what exists underneath the surface of our behavioral patterns. So the school of thought on the law of hypnotic rhythm, which is discussed in a decent amount of detail in the book called Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. I've recommended the book on the podcast before. I've read it a few times, and every single time I do, it becomes a little bit more ingrained and a part of the analysis process, if you will, in navigating up and down the consciousness scale from lower frequencies or things that feel heavy or don't feel good to higher ones, really calling ourselves out on the patterns that we keep every day and why we do or don't do things we either do or don't want to do. What makes us behaviorally us? What makes us stand behind our beliefs? Where do we develop our beliefs? What is it that actually forms them? And why do some people have different beliefs than others? Of course, it's very evidence-based as far as what people see evidence of in their day initially is what forms a lot of the beliefs, but sometimes it's also what people suggest or recommend to us by projections from their own energy field, things that they are feeling emotionally if they are not diving in and dealing with, if they're not going under the surface to find out why they are doing things and how they developed their beliefs. In denying themselves and promoting the false self, they will project that false self or that negativity onto others. And we, unconsciously, initially, we have the potential to really take those beliefs as our own and start to, without something that we are aligned with ourselves, we start to align with other people who seemingly are justified in their convictions and their beliefs. So until we can analyze really our beliefs, where they were developed and which ones are serving or not serving us, we're really at the will of anyone else with a strong enough convicted belief, whether it's positive or negative. If you don't have a belief on something yourself, or if your belief is negatively charged, you're more likely to jump on board with other people who are negatively charged, or jump on board with whoever is the most convicted that feels right to you based on whatever mood you're in. If you're in a bad mood and somebody comes in with a strong conviction on something and starts projecting their negativity onto you or around you, very easy without your own strength and conviction on what you believe in to jump to theirs and allow their belief to be your own. And this happens a lot. This happened to me a lot. So that's why this law of hypnotic rhythm was big for me to really dive into which beliefs were mine, which ones weren't, are and how did they form, what happened. So the first part of this, there are 3 boxes. This will be a little refresher. 3 boxes, 1 box with an arrow pointing to it, a second box with another box right after it. So 3 boxes in a row. And the first box, you can put a T in there, and that box stands for your thoughts. So this is where whatever frequency you are at, imagine that that is what thought system you are aligning with. So this is why you have to start here instead of starting from an emotion or starting from a belief, because it seems that the thought process is what perpetuates the emotion that leads to the belief over time. So that's why no matter where you are, focus on what thoughts you are thinking first. This will be the beginning of allowing this law to help you. And it's also usually the easiest because sometimes it's difficult to identify with our emotions that we're having because they can be cluttered by the meanings that we give to the thoughts. Everything is subjective and everything means different things to different people, while emotions seem to be blanketed the same for everyone. And that's really, really important. That was something that was super huge for me to understand because it seems like no one can understand your emotions and it seems like no one can understand what you're going through. And they don't need to understand what you're going through. All that needs to happen is that you need to understand what you're going through. But although the thoughts that we think allow deeper or more surface level access to these emotions on this sliding scale, the emotions are pretty much identifiable. Meaning if you're sad, you are sad. It's very difficult to feel sad and say that you're happy. Same thing when you're super happy and you feel the emotion of happy, it's very difficult to say that you are now sad and start thinking sad things. The emotions are blanketed, but the thoughts, the infinite degree of different thoughts that exist on the scale leading from unhappiness to happiness as you work your way up the thought process, because some thoughts feel better than others. We just don't think that we're able to allow us to choose which thoughts that we think. So again, the first part of this, identify what thoughts you are thinking, write them down, circle all of them in a big circle, put them in there, and then this is your baseline. This is what you are starting at right now. These are the thoughts you are thinking. And then you could take these thoughts and then be honest with yourself and say, well, how am I feeling? I feel this way right now in this moment. And then you'll see how the thoughts that you are thinking, it's aligning with whatever you're feeling all the time, every time. You're not going to write ever anything down of all this negative, horrible stuff that's happening in your life and these terrible thoughts that you have. And then when you go to identify what emotion you are charged with, is it going to be different? This is where we could tell if we're lying to ourselves or not. If we start to feel one emotion and then we're saying something else, but we're inside absolutely feeling something, this is the beginning of the cover-up of the false self to try to be this person in the world that you are not. And this again is why it's important to focus on what thoughts you are thinking and then compare that to your GPS as to what you're feeling and see if it is in alignment. And if it's an alignment in a negative way, that is okay. So if you're like, nope, I'm thinking horrible thoughts and I do not feel good, that is okay. That's actually phenomenal because it's such a huge step in the direction of being able to resolve this. It's such a huge step in the direction of honesty, and it's such a huge step in being able to really get good at using the GPS of our emotions to align and define where we are aligned as far as the thoughts that we are thinking, seeing how closely these are tied together. So that first box, a T. And as you do this method, write down all of the thoughts that you are thinking and keep in mind that this is, although an in-the-moment practice we're talking about, we're also talking about this for every moment of your life as to how you've developed narratives in your life. We're doing this consciously now, but know that over time, unconsciously, this is also how the patterns that you've been living that you may like or may not like have been stored. And it's the easiest way I found to break them up. The second box that is to the right of the first box is the E box. You put an E in there, and that stands for your emotions. And what that means is that in order to form a belief, we have to charge the thoughts with energy. We have to charge the thoughts we are thinking with energy in the form of an emotion. Emotion, energy in motion. We are moving energy around and we are attaching it to thoughts. This is important because in this process, it is repetitive. It repeats itself quite often, which is why very seldom, if you have a thought about something initially, it doesn't emotionally charge you unless you've had something similar in the past, like some of these more universal references such as death or more tragic things. Those thoughts are universally charged already from such an emotional stamp being on them from what's considered to be negative things or traumatic things. So these are things that could be out in the ether in regards to death or loss or some kind of a trauma, whereas if you were to think those thoughts or pick up on them, they may be already emotionally charged just around you and you're feeling that and picking up on that. But in general, if something is going on in your day or at work or in the relationship that you have, initially the thoughts aren't fully emotionally charged at first. It takes a while for us to repeat them and believe them and basically put ourselves subconscious to work to continue that process. If we keep thinking these thoughts over time with a charged emotion, that will get stamped into you, into everything that makes you up energetically. You will have a stamp, and then this will form a belief. It doesn't matter if the thoughts you are thinking, if it's true or not. It's true to you, and you charge it with an emotion, then it is going to create a physical response from you that aligns with that emotion that you are thinking. As you continue to think these thoughts and charge these thoughts randomly with whatever emotion you are applying to it based on the meaning that you are giving the experience or the relationship or the thing in your life, if there's something that you are giving power to outside of you, and you keep thinking thoughts of lack or negativity, or that you're not enough, or that things don't go your way, whatever the infinite variety of those thoughts that you are thinking that align with the emotion of not enough, this is the process that under the surface is creating the belief system that you live your life to. What you believe is an emotional attachment, a connection, a little literal tether between the thoughts you are thinking and the emotions you have literally grappling hooked to the thoughts based on the meanings that you've given them. This forms these energetic ruts in your being and also forms the belief, which is why some people believe things, and if you ask them why they believe it, they literally can't tell you. And it's not that they're being resistant or trying to be difficult. In most cases, they literally don't know. We literally sometimes don't know if we have a negative belief about something or something we can do or something we can't do. And somebody's like, why? Why do you not think you can do that? And you're just like, I don't know. That I don't know is usually so real. But what it's covering up is every single time something happened that you wanted to do something and didn't. You wanted to go talk to somebody and you didn't. Every single time you doubted, which is what that negative thought process is doubt that you are connected to everything amazing. You don't believe it, and then you act out of doubt, and it doesn't feel good. And then all of the thoughts surrounding that experience, you've stamped, literally tethered a negative emotion to, and that's why whenever you see anything like that in the world, not only is it confirmation of what you believe, because we're programmed to see what it is that we say we believe, but it reaffirms it, and it's constant confirmation over and over and over of your belief in the world. But that doesn't mean that that belief is the only one that exists. It's the one that you have given power to based on the emotions you have tethered to your thoughts, based on how you are perceiving situations in your life. And how you're perceiving situations in your life is a direct correlation to how much you trust that everything is working out for you, that you are connected to some energy thing that we don't know or understand, and that thing is perfect, and you are also perfect, and you're here to grow and evolve and expand with it through contrast, which sucks to the egoic self and mind. It's suffering. But this is the process that we need to break free from. It's literally this process. As you think your thoughts and tie emotions to them repetitiously, this becomes a belief that we unconsciously live our life to. We have something in our brains called the RAS. It's the reticular activating system. Again, we talked about it on the show for sure, but it's super powerful. It is that part of our brain, however this works, that is basically kind of imagine it as your eyes under the surface, your incredibly powerful peripherals working underneath the surface of your conscious experience. We use the punch buggy game all the time, and if you just buy a new car, that's all you see. If you want a new whatever in your life and you're focusing on that and reading about it and thinking about it, then that's all you tend to see in the world. It's not magic that more of these things popped up, but in the infinite field of availability, they were always there. You have told yourself, your subconscious, you have told your brain that you want to see these things in your life. And the reticular activating center in our brain is designed to bring it to our attention. So it's not science fiction. It is phenomenally scientific that this is how our brains work. And we have real world things that we can use as examples to try to break the resistance to, hey, if you have been telling yourself that you're not expecting a lot from the world, it doesn't matter what evidence you have, but if you keep telling that story, then you have a part of your brain that is literally designed and programmed to continue the narrative of your story, to keep proving you right. Not because the world is terrible and the universe is against you, because you've literally told yourself that's the part of the world you want to see. But a lot of the times, I couldn't take responsibility for that because I was too busy blaming all the things that I thought were happening to me to allow whatever was going on inside of me to be released so that I could see that I was doing it to myself in most cases. Anything other than us doing it to ourselves is something that I would consider the collective consciousness or some kind of a dramatic negative energy loop that you walk into. And even that's by design, I think. But I have found in my life that I created, I'm going to say all of the dramatic negative things in my life, because even if there was a justifiable thing that we'll say was negative, collectively understood as negative, that something that was out of my control that happened to me, there was still my responsibility to allow a different response, a more positive response to these things. But I gave them a certain meaning in my life based on what they represented. And when certain things went away or certain things didn't work out the way I wanted, I would continue those thoughts, attaching a negative emotion to them. They became the belief that I held, and then I would see that in the world, and it would repeat itself. And this is the loop that I talk about a lot on the show. We get into these loops, we don't realize that we are creating them. So when we ask to be released from these loops because we're done with it, we've had enough, we're tired of it, we're ready for a change, I want to see something different. When we start to outline what we see as being different for us, the only way that we can observe something different in our reality is if we continue to be presently aware of the thoughts we're thinking and the emotions that we are connecting to them. So if we think negatively about ourselves, it's really important that we identify what those thoughts are, write them out, and then see if we still emotionally agree with what it's saying about us. And anything that is a negative thing about you, and I don't mean something that you can improve or get better or become a better version of you, but something that's just a blatant lie that you've been telling yourself or that you believed somebody else that said something about you. An example of this is, you'll never amount to anything. That's a lie. That's an absolute lie, and no one else, including you, can tell you that and really mean it, but you're the only one that can believe it and then make it real. But it's not a true thing because there's always the potential to move past whatever limitation you have. So that would be an example of something that you would just have to stop saying. You'd have to realize that whatever examples in your life that led you to believe that led you to the point where you're aware of it so you can stop doing it. And you'll create less of that pattern in your life. You'll see less examples that represented you not amounting to anything. And if you could do this over time and start really calling your thoughts into question, being honest with yourself as to why they exist and the fact that they were just trying to move you forward, then you can release the negative emotion that is attached to those thoughts, let them float around you without actually emotionally affecting you. And without emotionally affecting you, not only will you shift your belief, because your belief won't have anything to substantiate itself anymore, but you will also change the frequency that you are existing at. You won't be in that heavy emotion anymore. You're releasing it because you're calling out the emotion and the thought connection, and you're choosing a new one. This will tell your reticular activating center different things to look for, which you will then see in your world, because that's over time. Again, you'll have to build momentum during this process, but over time, that's what you will see, and then you will have more things to confirm this new belief by. And then this is the literal process when people are like, well, how do I do this? How do I change my thinking? How do I allow a different version of me to exist? This is my literal process for doing that. And I've done it for multiple levels of loops in my life, and the impact has been really powerful for me, and I can't recommend it enough. So definitely it does begin with you taking initiative and writing these things out, these things down. For years I knew about processes like this, and I never did it. I just was happy that I knew it, and I would be able to talk about it or teach it, but I wasn't doing it for me, and I still ran into the same things in my life and the same negative loops. I was aware of it, but this is where you go from that state of like knowing to knowing I need to make these changes and knowing I do this, but then still creating it in your life, to being done with creating it in your life and using what you know. I feel like a lot of us out there and a lot of you listening are right there now, ready to use what we know. I feel like a lot of you guys don't listen to this because you're looking to learn something as much as you're looking to confirm what you already know. I feel that with all my heart that you guys know this, you get it, you got it, and we're all kind of collectively just allowing platforms for positivity to kind of shine through. I know so many of you guys have your own positive channels and avenues that you are promoting and supporting other people with positivity while you guys heal yourself, and I think that that is so powerful. So I do hope that this helps a little bit, even just knowing that there is a method that is confirmed by not just pseudoscience, metaphysics. Like, this is very based in actual science as to how thoughts, emotions, beliefs, and then what our brains bring to our attention. It's exciting almost to know that it's kind of a method that satisfies everyone. You can get behind it on the spiritual, energetic, universal field of how you feel and how we believe energy works. And then scientifically, there isn't a scientist that wouldn't agree that this is how, or a medical professional that wouldn't agree that these components of our brain are real and this is how it works. So if you have any questions about breaking your own loops or how this could work in your life, I love talking about this off air too. Head on over to likeattractslike11.com, shoot me a message through the listener portal, and we will dive into this process together. As always, always, if you are listening on YouTube, we're starting to build an awesome little following on YouTube. Thank you so much. Consider subscribing on there. You can leave messages there for me as well, and we will get to everything and everyone. So as always, have an amazing day, a wonderful night, and I will see you guys next time.